Test on black, test on black, test on black, test on black, test on black. Yeah. Yeah, we smoke the weed. Who won't fuck with me? Now I feel like she got feet.
What's going on, family? I'm on the move. So let's keep in mind when you're on the road, remember that you do not have to worry about if the cop knows you or not. Most cops don't know who's driving what car or when or where or why. What you plan on being doing it. If you're driving 50 miles an hour, a police officer cannot see in your vehicle, okay? They don't know what you're doing. They don't care, all right? However, if you're breaking the law, they're going to enforce the law. And a good cop is going to do it fair and balanced, right? And they're going to go out there and they're going to make sure that they're respectful and they're going to be doing their job. And hopefully you'll learn from whatever experience that you're dealing with, right? Being a police officer is a lot about being education, right? Being educated. You got to educate people. I know this. I spent 25 years as a police officer here in public safety here in the state of Georgia. And here in the state of Georgia, there's a thing called discretionary powers. Discretionary powers, right? So, an officer does have some discretionary powers when it comes to how they handle charges and things of that nature. Do all charges require a discretionary thought? No. Now, you're going to have some cops who are zero tolerance, and then you're going to have some cops who are a little bit more like me, which usually comes in time. And they're like, we're going to teach you something, and hopefully you won't do it again, right? And they're not going to write a bunch of tickets. But then you got some cops who are, like I said, zero tolerance. They're going to write that ticket. And guess what? I'm okay with that because that's the job, right? If they choose to write everybody they write a ticket, everybody they come across a ticket, then, at the end of the day, that is completely up to them as police officers. And I respect it, right? So you'll never hear me talk bad about a cop who writes tickets, right? Because that's just what they have to do. It's what they get paid for. It's like basically downing a fireman for putting out a fire. Really? We're not going to do that. They're public safety. They're meant to teach and enforce the law, right? But I'm not going to tell you that tickets don't generate revenue. I mean, cities are not supposed to rely on revenue. Counties and cities are not supposed to rely on revenue of traffic citations, right? And so, I'm not going to say that it doesn't go to revenue, though. But there is no way that cops ride around here giving quotas in 2025. If they are doing it, it will be found out, and they will be in a whole bunch of trouble, right? The United States government will not allow that. So, or mostly, I don't even think Georgia government or state governments will allow that. So, once it's found out, it's going to be dealt with, all right? Posts here in Georgia, it's very serious. Georgia Post is very serious. They're not going to allow police officers to step out of line. So let's talk about what you should do. You're on the road, you're riding around, I don't know, whatever road you're on, 85, 95, 285. These are all Georgia highways. And you're out here doing your business, minding your business, and all of a sudden, whoop, whoop, you get pulled over by the police. I mean, I know everybody's more than likely been pulled over once or twice, right? And you've been in a car most of the time, you know how to react. But I've seen some pretty crazy reactions in my day, quite honestly. I've seen people flip out, start crying, all kinds of stuff. Before I even told them, I remember I pulled a lady over one time. No lie, I was just going to be like, hey, did you know that your back tail light was broken? Right? I started to walk up. Before I even said, hey, she starts bawling. I didn't know what to do. I was like, I was a young rookie. I was like, oh, my God. What is she doing, right? So anyway, after a few minutes of standing there, and I asked her, are you okay? Is there something I can help you with? And she was like, I just never been pulled over before. And whether or not she's never been pulled over before, I don't know. But I know there are some people who have never been pulled over before. So if she had not been pulled over before, that would be a pretty genuine reaction to being pulled over. Nobody wants to get pulled over by the police. I totally understand that. One of the things that people need to consider that when a police officer is walking up to your vehicle or to you on a bike, they have no idea who you are, what you're about, just like you don't know what they're about, right? So it's a very tense moment until the ice is broken, right? Someone's got to break the ice, right? I used to have a spill I used to give people, and then I would try to break the ice and be like, "Hey, tell me what we got going on or whatever," and I'd try to find a way to maybe build a slight rapport with people, so that they wouldn't feel so uncomfortable because everybody has their own opinion about police and sheriffs in the United States, right? So that's what I would do. But in the event that you just get a guy who's just pulling you over, or a woman who pulls you over, and you're like, "Hey, I pulled you over for this speeding." One thing I would tell people: if you're on a motorcycle, please don't run from the police, especially in the state of Georgia. Don't run from the police. It's not gonna help you. I mean, yeah, you may have some driving skills. You may be the one that can ride through traffic on a one lane highway, wheeling it all the way down the shoulder. I mean, you may be that skilled. I don't know. But I would tell you, don't endanger everyone else's lives based off of what you got going on with the police. I would also say that if you're in a dark area, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't want to pull over. It's dark." Da da da. I've heard women say that, and I get it. You don't want to be pulled over by a strange, a police officer, someone who says he's a police officer. It's dark. You don't know. But let me tell you something. In Georgia, in some towns, you get charged with that. It's called fleeing and eluding. Also, you know, just consider that you not pulling over right away just raised the pucker factor about 125% of any police officer that may be attempting to get your attention with their blue lights or red lights and sirens, right? So just keep that in mind. So you got to do what you got to do, but I'm telling you, unless you can explain it really well and calmly, you're probably going to get charged with fleeing and eluding. There's a lot of times in most jurisdictions that calls for you to go into custody. They're going to take you into custody. So I would suggest finding a place safely where you can pull over right away, right? Where, if you're going to indicate to the officer somehow, "Hey, I'm pulling over. Hey, just give me a second. I'm on the side of I don't like the side of this road," right? And most times, I mean, me personally, I would be like, "Hey, I appreciate that," because I don't like being on the side of the highway or the road with anything. So, hey, man, it might work out in your benefit to, you know, be a little bit more cordial in that way, right? Also, when an officer makes their approach, a lot of times they're going to give you a spill. Like, "Hey, I'm Officer so and so with such and such jurisdiction, sheriff's police department. I'm coming to pull you over because I saw your tail light was out," right? Whatever. And they're going to pull you over and they're going to give you that spill. The first thing you should be out of your mouth should not be, "What the blankety blank are you pulling me over for?" I mean, that just sets a bad tone off the rip, of how the traffic stop is probably going to end up for you, right? Most cops are human, and I say that, in jest, but most cops are human, right? So you don't want to be in a situation where you're attacking someone and they pretty much have the power of the pen, okay? I'm just being honest. I'm not trying to say that cops abuse their power. I'm sure there are some out there that shouldn't be on the police force. I mean, I worked internal affairs when I was really active, proactive on the street. And so I get it, I get it. But at the end of the day, if someone has the power of the pen, it's like telling your college professor, that's an A paper after they done gave you a C, and then you flip out on them and then wonder why you got an F. I don't know. That is, you need that paper to graduate, but you're cursing out your college professor. Once the officer approaches your vehicle and asks you for your license and registration, I'm not very particular myself on people reaching for their license and registration. Just depending on where it is, especially on a motorcycle. If you're one of these individuals that keeps it in I don't know, some people got like the Westlope chest pouches or one of them cross bags or whatever. Those are pretty cool. You know, you could have that, and that would be. Excuse me, I'm in traffic. That would be one of those things where I'm okay with you reaching for it, but it never hurts to ask the officer, "Hey, do you mind if I reach in here to grab my, license and registration?" Those are things that are very important. Okay, so and I'm not talking about the license registration. I'm just talking about making sudden movements. I mean, regardless of how you feel about police officers, are trained to be on guard. Okay, they're trained to be on guard. They want to make sure they go home to their families like you want to go home to yours, right? And so we don't want to give the officer any reason, in particular, to feel like they need to defend themselves or stop a threat, right? So keep that in mind. You can never go wrong with, hey, do you mind if I reach for my license and my registration? It's in my pouch right here. I used to have a response to people. Georgia's is an open carry state, right? Or a gun carry. It's really a gun state, right? People can carry permit, have gun permits, and have concealed. Nobody cares, right? As long as you do it responsibly. And I remember being told one time, "Hey man, I got a gun in my pocket," and I don't know why I said it, but it came out of my mouth and said, "Hey, don't show me yours. I won't show you mine." And that was just how the traffic went. He started laughing. I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm just pulling you over because he ran the stop sign. Blah 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 blah. What you got going on?" Turns out the guy was just rushing to work. No big deal. And he was like, "Yeah," but I did appreciate the fact that he let me know he had a weapon, right? Not that it was a big deal or anything, or it was going to stop me from writing him a ticket or anything like that. If that was the case, I don't even think I wrote that guy a ticket that day. But the fact that he was polite enough to tell me really set the mood on how the traffic stop went, and I appreciated it because I have a job to do, and he got to get to work, right? So we ain't trying to be out here messing up his day, right? So it was good. It was good for me. So always ask. You can't go wrong, especially on a motorcycle. Most bikers, well, I won't say most bikers. There are a lot of bikers I know, regular dudes who are not, you know, affiliated in any way, right? That and even those who are affiliated, they carry firearms. You know, hell, especially in an open carry state. Ain't nothing wrong with it. Nobody cares. You know what I'm saying? As long as you respect the boundaries, there should be no issues, right? But it's very appreciated if you tell an officer, "Hey, I'm strapped up," right? Thanks. So when you're dealing with the police officer, I would always say, you know, you ain't got to be happy that you got pulled over. I'm not telling you to jump for joy. What I'm simply saying is that at some given point, you and him or her have to have some type of agreement that sees you either leaving that scene without being in handcuffs and or going, home with a citation, right? Either which way you're going home, right? So keep that in mind. Once the officer gets your citation, excuse me, your license and registration or whatever he's dealing with or whatever she's dealing with, they're going to look at it, determine whether or not they're going to give you a citation for whatever the infraction is, whatever their probable cause was for pulling you over, right? Whether it been speeding, whether it been running a stop sign, I don't know, playing your music too loud. Keep that in consideration when you're dealing with police officers. I guess the overall sentiment I'm trying to say is if you're dealing with a cop and you're getting pulled over, be polite, go through the motions, and just maybe you walk out of there with a warning. You know, just maybe. Most cops ain't. Listen, first of all, if a cop's pulling over a motorcycle, you probably did something really crazy. I'm just being honest with you. I don't know too many cops that spend their time chasing down motorcycles. Now, them state patrol boys, they'll run you down now. I wouldn't run in Georgia. I'm just putting it out there. There's some jurisdictions that they live for that. So, I'm not saying the state patrol boys actually run around here looking for chases. I'm just saying that if you run, they will chase you. Also, just keep in mind, safety is the key, right? So if you're getting pulled over, it's about safety, right? You've done something that the officer has deemed unsafe, and well, it may have needed to be addressed. So if you get pulled over, I'm glad you got pulled over, and they address it, right? Hopefully everybody's respectful to each other, everybody's professional, and move on. Because believe it or not, a driver who is not in law enforcement can be unprofessional. If you're a driver, think about it. How would you like me to come to your job? I don't know. Say you work in customer service. Say you work in a restaurant. I don't know. Let's even go like deeper than that. Say you work at McDonald's. You're a server at McDonald's, right? And I come in there and I'm like, hey, blankety blank. This is some blankety blank blank blank. Come on now. This is how you do it. These fries ain't even. Are you cooking these fries? You don't want that drama. Nobody wants to hear that, right? Hey, I thank you for joining me. If you made it to the end of this video, please like and subscribe. If you got more to add to this, if you think I should have added something else to this, I'll just give you the basics. I'd be more than appreciative that you put it in the comments. And listen, if you got a vehicle or bike in your garage collecting dust, pull it out, dust it off, and enjoy the ride.
Test all in black, test all in black, test all in black, test all in black.